It's a question I hear getting thrown around a lot these days. Which is better, the show or the movie? And really, it's a unique situation to be in. Up until 2013, Dragon Ball had never released a movie that was in any way tied to the main series plot. The main series being the storied events of the manga written by creator Akira Toriyama, or the canon as some people called it. In the movies we had characters like Lord Slug, Janemba, Broly, and so forth. Being in the movies, however, meant that these characters were not part of the main story. They were not canon characters. They were fun what-if scenarios, fanfictions brought to life for the sake of a featured film. They in no way impacted the main series at all. But here today we are going to discuss the first ever canon Dragon Ball movie and compare it to its anime's retelling. This is anime versus movie, Dragon Ball Super versus Battle of Gods. In 1995, the Dragon Ball manga penned by Akira Toriyama came to a close, and seeing as the anime depended on the manga for the story, the Dragon Ball Z series ended on January 31st, 1996, and a great series came to an abrupt and unsatisfying end. Until... On March 30th, 2013, after 17 years, the new Dragon Ball content from Akira Toriyama was finally released. It wasn't a manga, it wasn't an anime, it was a movie. And because Akira Toriyama wrote it, it was now the first ever canon movie for Dragon Ball, which was huge and went on to have great commercial success. Another 2 years passed by, and in 2015 the announcement of Dragon Ball Super was made. A new Dragon Ball anime following the events of Dragon Ball Z's Majin Buu arc. Now the problem with that was, the Battle of Gods movie in 2013 had already told that story. And now the series wanted to recant that story over the course of 14 episodes, causing a divide as well as confusion amongst fans, ultimately leading to the question, which should I watch? Which is better? I'm here to help answer that question today. In 5 rounds representing various categories, I will compare these two incarnations of the same story to help you decide once and for all, which is better. Round 1. Animation. When it comes to any anime, few things are as important as the quality of its animation. Those that have come from Dragon Ball Z's heyday can confirm this. While the series had its bad moments, when the chips were down, that show delivered in a big way. But it was never something people thought about complimenting or drawing attention to back then. It was just another great show on TV. Now, thanks to the internet, as soon as an episode airs, you can literally get hundreds of thousands of responses and opinions on that episode in seconds, which by and large is a great thing. But it can lead to a sheep-like mentality when it comes to some people forming their own opinions, which can then lead to unfair and uninformed criticisms. That said, I haven't exactly been quiet when it comes to voicing my own opinions on the subject either. I've made videos both criticizing the bad and praising the good of this arc, but I haven't really thrown my 2 cents in on what I thought of the movie's animation when compared with the series. And there's 2 big reasons for that: time and money. When Toei Animation is tasked with creating a weekly episode of Dragon Ball Super, they have to make magic happen. Between organizing storyboard artists, script writers, digital coloring, key animators, in-between animators, voice actors, directors, producers, touch-up artists, and that's not even the half of it. It's a miracle they even have any good animation to show at all. Each episode requiring thousands and thousands of drawings, and that's where time comes in. The mark of a true master illustrator isn't how good the work is, but how fast he can produce quality work. Take this for example. This is a drawing of Goku I am working on right now. It has taken me quite a few hours to get to this point, but if I was to work for Toei Animation, I would need to produce a drawing every 10 minutes or less depending on my position in the team. This is a Goku that I drew in 10 minutes. But why is this relevant? Well, the movie was in production for well over a year. That means the artists at Toei Animation had time to draw without those pesky restraints. They were free to take their time, which is the ideal scenario. But that's not to say Toei doesn't have some great in-house animators, and surely they could get some outside help from more experienced master illustrators and animators, right? Well, you're correct. All that is true. But that's when money comes in. Those pretty pictures that dance across our screens cost a fortune to produce if they are to be any good at all. And with the limited budget that Toei is working with to produce this series, they have to spread out the best animators as efficiently as possible. Episode 5 is a great example of an episode that had its moments, but crumbled to time and budget restraints. It was directed by the exceedingly talented Naoki Tate, but failed to deliver anything substantial because the budget and time wasn't there to make the episode. For the movie, however, in addition to their existing budget, to help fund the production and the promotion for the movie, Toei Animation was granted 50 million yen as part of a non-profit organization, Uni Japan's co-production certification program, which was developed by the Japanese government. Yeah, you heard right. The Japanese government helped funding a Dragon Ball movie. The movie did use CGI, which ultimately took from the experience in my opinion, but even though the use of CGI is jarring, after 291 episodes of Dragon Ball Z, I challenge any of you to find a single scene that stands up to this masterpiece from the movie in terms of animation. And even though I am proud of what the young animation teams at Toei have produced with Super, there is no denying who the real juggernaut in this category is. Point goes to the movie. Round 2. Supporting Cast. Whew, this next category is a doozy. Without these guys, the movie and series would fall apart. They are the glue that holds it all together. The Bill Murray to Goku's Michael Jordan. And although they are in fact the same characters, slight differences in direction and exposition divide them. So now it's time to decide which had the best supporting cast. Looking from the outside, I saw these two casts as mirror images of one another. Every character was accounted for, and they even shared some of the same dialogue. Whis explaining Goku's past with Frieza. Beerus cracking that joke about the length of an anime episode. I've gone through these with fine-tooth combs, and really, beat for beat, they hit the same notes. Or do they? In the movie, when Vegeta meets Beerus on screen for the first time, we are presented with a flashback. It takes us back to the Saiyans' homeworld where Vegeta's father, the king, is hosting Lord Beerus for dinner. King Vegeta acting as the footstool while the prince watches from afar. It's a very nice scene showing how even the most prideful must bend to Beerus' will. However, in the series it adds this extra dynamic to the scene that in my opinion makes it much more compelling. We again get greeted with a flashback much like in the movie, complete with Vegeta footstool. The key difference being the young prince's reaction to his father in pain. Instead of staring, biting his tongue, he runs to his father's aid only to be paralyzed with fear. He falls to the floor and the flashback suddenly ends. The anime version thus far is much more in keeping with Vegeta's character, and that's not even the most important difference. As the interaction with Vegeta and Beerus continues, Vegeta again falls to the floor, echoing the encounter that he had in his youth with Lord Beerus. Still crippled by that same fear, it adds a gravity to the situation. It creates an extra obstacle for Vegeta to overcome, and when he eventually does, it's all the more epic because we know what he went through to get to that point. It connects his past to the present in a much more visceral way and helps validate Beerus as an antagonist as a result. There is more detail and substance in the anime's retelling, and that's its biggest strength. In the movie, Beerus wakes and immediately goes in search of the Super Saiyan God. In the anime, we actually get to see Beerus traveling the universe acting as the God of Destruction. And in seeing such, we learn about his character through his actions and not just his words. That small change to Vegeta's scene, the introduction to Beerus' character, and how Whis engages with Vegeta and the others during the fight scene, all help paint a much more interesting picture overall. It's the subtle changes that make the world of difference. Point goes to the anime. Round 3. Best Goku. Okay, that last one was the supporting cast. Surely the movie, with the budget and time given to writing the script, has the most accurate main character representation? Or do you think the anime has the best leading man portrayal? Whatever way you slice it, he's the Bill Murray to Dragon Ball's Groundhog Day. It's time to decide which one had the best Son Goku. He's been the main character since Dragon Ball Episode 1. With nearly 500 episodes to his name, Goku has been the head honcho throughout Dragon Ball Z, and currently Dragon Ball Super. And looking at this with so broad of a spectrum, I almost went insane considering all the variables. But at his core, Goku is cheerful, tenacious, and naive, with a strong urge to fight and throw caution to the wind to satisfy that itch. We first get introduced to the movie's Goku while he is training on King Kai's world. Really, it's the perfect scene to take up from, and on top of that, he's arrogant in challenging Lord Beerus to a fight from the get-go. Naturally, you'd think this must be our perfect Goku. But that's where the similarities end. While Goku loves to fight all out, he craves a great fight more. He rarely, if ever, begins a fight at full strength. He always in some small way works up to it, testing his opponent's strength to see if he can push himself. But in the movie, he goes all out from the beginning, forgetting to savor the fight. You could make the argument that of course Goku would go all out against Lord Beerus. He's the god of destruction, the most dangerous entity in the universe. But remember once upon a time when a certain tyrannical intergalactic emperor squared off with our hero? Even though the fate of the entire universe was at stake, he still eased his way into the fight, saving his trump card for later in the confrontation. And that's where the anime got it right. Goku would of course go through all the incarnations of Super Saiyan until ultimately failing at Super Saiyan 3. It just makes more sense with his personality and his character. Now I know he offered to go back down to Super Saiyan 2 in the movie, but there's a certain amount of theater to Goku. He doesn't want to show his hand unless it's the perfect moment. The Goku vs. Hit fight from the Universe 6 arc is testament to that. Also, I think the anime left more room for characterization in the fight sequences, most notably being the episode where Goku's synchronized punches with Beerus began tearing the universe apart. Fully aware of what is happening, He clashes fists with Beerus twice before perfecting it on the third. By the way, if he didn't master that movement by the third, the Earth would have been destroyed along with many other parts of the universe. Goku just unflinchingly went for it instead of playing it safe for the sake of others' safety. Even I have to admit, when I watched this for the first time, I exclaimed, "That's such a Goku thing to do." So while the movie had some great Goku moments, none were as potent as what the anime offered. Point goes to the anime. Round 4. Background and environment. From the rolling blue hills and green skies of Namek to the desolate wastelands of planet Earth, Dragon Ball has showcased numerous environments, with some more memorable than others. It's time we compare the best backgrounds and environments. Possibly the most striking difference between the movie and the anime's retelling is its choice of environment. They both take place during Bulma's 38th birthday party and hit all the same key plot points throughout, but the locations at which all these events take place differ tremendously. The movie is set at the Bereaved family estate, surrounded by a bustling metropolis, while the anime opted for a nautical theme, set on a giant yacht in the midst of a giant blue ocean. If you're looking at this from a functional perspective, it really shouldn't matter what the setting is. However, when you start to look at it from an animation standpoint, it becomes very clear why the anime went for an all-ocean backdrop. It's cheaper and it's easier to animate over. Toei just needs to accumulate stock images and backgrounds of the ocean for this section of the anime and just draw the characters over it. Far less legwork, really. It's actually really clever if you think about it. With the movie, they needed to get backgrounds for towns, cities, forests, oceans, space, clouds, the list goes on. And as a result, the movie is much more visually stimulating. This is just a situation where the movie offered everything that the anime did and much, much more. When it comes to the overall setting, the anime is a fish out of water. Point goes to the movie. Final round. Story.
I'm sorry? What was that again?
I'm a god.
You're God.
I'm a god. I'm not the god. I don't think.
In my opinion, this is by far the most important aspect of any movie or TV show. While animation and faithful portrayals of characters are very important, the story is paramount. And for two very similar tellings of the same story, they begin in two very different places. But how can you tell if one story is superior in its telling over another? Especially when on the surface they are almost identical. Well, to answer that, we need to ask ourselves a question. What's our favorite arc from Dragon Ball Z? Of the four main arcs, 9 times out of 10, people will either choose the Cell or the Frieza saga, and I think there's good reason for that. What these two arcs have in common over the others is actually quite simple, but it makes sense. It's not their villains, it's not cool transformations or amazing moves. No, it's long-term storytelling. And the very best example I could think of for that is Gohan. At the beginning of Dragon Ball Z, we met a tiny, timid, easily scared young child hiding behind Goku's leg. Suddenly, and without warning, he demonstrated incredible feats of strength that vanished in an instant. And these take place over the course of 185 episodes, until that incredible scene shows us exactly what we had been waiting for. Gohan's transformation into a Super Saiyan 2 was a favourite amongst fans because it had been a part of the story for years prior. We had grown up with this character and had gone on a journey with him, and a climax at that arc. But how does this apply to the current argument between Battle of Gods, the movie, and the Dragon Ball Super anime? Well, as I said earlier, they are two very similar tellings of the same story, but they began in two very different places. In the anime, we first see Beerus when he is attending dinner on a planet he suspects of having delicious food. As a result of subpar cuisines, however, Beerus destroys half of the entire planet, thus grabbing the attention of the Old and the Supreme Kai. This leads to Beerus seeking out the Super Saiyan God, and ultimately his fight with Goku begins. And like any fight worth talking about, it didn't just begin and end. It had sections, or chapters if you will. The best way I can describe this is by referring you to the Goku and Frieza fight from Dragon Ball Z. Whenever someone talks about that fight, they need to specify a specific part of it, be it the underwater Kamehameha, the times 20 Kaioken, Krillin's death, the Super Saiyan transformation, Frieza getting cut in half, Goku's mercy, Frieza's death. Believe it or not, I skipped a ton of things from that fight. But my point is that they are all self-contained stories within a greater narrative. They were smaller battles within a war. The Goku and Beerus fight is no different. It begins with a transformation. It has Goku coming to terms with his power and new abilities. Goku trying to land a clean shot on Beerus. Beerus and Goku's hand clashes. Goku's chest getting stabbed, and so on. All of these help build the story to a final conclusion that is both thrilling and satisfying to the viewer. We see Beerus early in the series and learn how he operates by seeing him work as a god of destruction. We begin to understand Whis as a character more and the role he plays in all of this. The movie, however, doesn't demonstrate Beerus as a threat prior to his interaction with Goku. It doesn't show him acting as a god of destruction. It has a fight that, while incredible, is made of 2 parts, and is a self-contained fight sequence with no interwound micro-stories. The core issue is that while the movie provides a much more rich animation and visual experience, it delivers a shallow representation of what Dragon Ball fans have come to appreciate, and in reality it never stood a chance. With the extended runtime at 105 minutes compared to the anime's 252 minutes for the arc, it was forced to cut corners where it simply couldn't afford to. Which means the deciding point has to go to the anime. The release of the Battle of Gods movie wasn't the wrong move. It was their only move. It wasn't by chance that the Battle of Gods movie was the first continuation of the canon since 1995, or ever with a movie. The truth is, after almost 2 decades passing by, Toei wasn't sure if the Japanese public was still interested in Dragon Ball the same way it was in the early 90s, and so they tested the public's interest with this movie. And in reality, it's thanks to the success of Battle of Gods and Resurrection of F that we now have our old show back and producing new content weekly. And while I know there are many of you out there who resent Dragon Ball Super and find it boring or subpar, I can't change your mind, but I will say this. The first saga of Dragon Ball Z had 39 episodes, and it got us to this point. This is what happened on the 39th episode of Dragon Ball Super. It's still such a young show and it has so much yet to offer. But I'd love to hear what you guys think. Do you agree? Disagree? Let me know in the comment section down below. If you guys want to see more Dragon Ball content like this, please feel free to subscribe. I'm totally not Mark, and until we meet again guys, thank you so much for watching.